You're listening to Developmental, Property and the Mind podcast, where development industry insight meet mindset with Trafalgar CEO Joe Abboud. Join one of the property industry's most free thinkers as he explores the path to success and contentment.
I'm really excited to have. Now, Joe's day-to-day business might be property investment, but in fact, today we get to hear about much more than that. He is described by people who know him best as driven and solutions-focused, but he's also known to be inspirational, motivational, and incredibly generous. So how does all of that fit in the dog-eat-dog world of property? Why don't we find out? So, Joe, welcome to the show.
Hi, how you going?
Good. So, listen, you've just flown in overnight. You've been away. Tell us about where you've just come back from.
Well, so I spent the last sort of 4 or 5 weeks in Beirut. It's snowing in Beirut at the moment, so we took the family and the kids skiing. They got to experience skiing and snow for the first time in their lives, so got the monkey off my back.
Wow.
Yeah, they're really cool skiers now, so
Excellent.
No more excuses about that.
Pretty extreme weather up there.
It was lovely. We got there and we witnessed a blizzard up in the mountains, almost 2,500 feet above sea level. And then the next 5 days was absolute paradise. Full sunshine, I had a 2 metre dump of snow and experienced the best skiing conditions I've ever experienced in my life.
Perfect. So you did more than just ski and hang out with the family when you were over there. I have a feeling you collected some pretty interesting stories and met some pretty interesting people. And I really want to dig into that a little bit more with you as we go along. But I want to set the scene and start with you. So start, I guess, from the beginning. And I'm really interested in you sharing a bit about what your path has been. We met about 18 months ago, and when I first met you, I thought property developer. I've worked with a lot of property developers, but boy, you've revealed yourself in 18 months to be, so multifaceted and so interesting. And part of that is about your story and how you got to be where you are today. Do you want to take us through that journey a little bit?
Right from the beginning?
Well, why don't we start where you are now and what you do day to day? I've sort of mentioned you do a bit of property investment, but that's just one part of what you do.
Look, we're definitely a property firm that looks to try to find some really rare opportunities and try to build value into property, not actually necessarily going into the construction phase. For me, it's all a little bit too hard and a bit of a waste of time, the way I see it. Add some value, land bank, try to build some value to the properties and either land bank them or unsell them, really to keep us going. But I guess it's all become about everyone else in a way, right? So it's become about, protecting the staff and the people around me and family and all that sort of stuff. And it seems to be a common theme in our lives these days where, it's not necessarily about money. I mean, the money helps, but, if we can make a difference along the way, just for one person or one soul, then, you've left this world a better place. So. And
how long have you had your business Trafalgar now?
Look, in a couple of different formats and ups and downs and, different companies and company names. But, I think through those tougher times back in 04, 5 and 6, sort of in that sort of range, Trafalgar sort of regrouped once I sort of got over the 2005, 2006 downturn.
And I want to go into that a bit with you in terms of one of the things I know that some of our listeners will be really interested in knowing from you, given your success and your insight into what the market's doing, is exactly that. The year's kicked off in a pretty powerful way for the industry in terms of lots of talk about where the market's at, what's happening with the credit situation and the Royal Commission, and there's lots of pressures on at the moment. Now, I know that you went through, as you just said, 4, 5 and 6, and that was a really tough time. Are you seeing any similarities with that time?
Yeah, look, absolutely. 05 from memory, I think it was, the government brought in this exit tax for stamp duty. So you paid stamp duty on the way in and the stamp duty on the way out. As soon as they brought in that exit tax, it took the bottom end of the market right out from under its feet. And, we couldn't sell anything. The thing about property development, when you go to full-scale development, as most of the guys that are suffering at the moment and will continue to suffer for a short time still, and no one knows how long that's going to be, is, external forces, elections, government policy change, ICAC inquiries, rather than, the way I see it, I think the way the government is dealing with it is rather than do it through the Reserve Bank and make them look like the bad guys and putting interest up, and I don't think that they actually can because of the state of the world right now, but, put different sorts of pressures on, different levers to be able to, over-regulate the banking, slow the lending down, get rid of brokers, do all these weird and wonderful things, and then, take the arse end of the market out of it, and you end up in a recession of some sort, and there's a correction in the market. And unfortunately for some people, that's, the beginning of the end. But for us, it's not like that. So we sort of wait for those opportunities. It doesn't sound really godlike to, want to take advantage of a downturn or people in vulnerable situations, but
I guess it's pretty reflective of your attitude to life anyway when you look at it more broadly or more deeply, and certainly to look at being counterintuitive or counter-cyclical, like you fundamentally are. That's what you're talking about.
Absolutely, we're definitely a counter-cyclical business, right? I think that's been a fundamental reason for our success. When we first got back into property, sort of 2010-ish, roughly speaking, after I'd finished all of the other stuff I had to deal with, it was the bottom end of the market. We got in the gloom, and we got out in the boom. So that's definitely set the scene for the future for us as a business, that we're counter-cyclical. When everyone's selling, we're buying, and when everyone's buying, we're selling. So,
and that's a great position to be in when you can get yourself into that position, isn't it?
Yeah, as long as if you consciously are able to make that decision and build that into your plan, then I think it'll pay the dividends.
So, as I said, property investment is just one part of what you're doing. You've got other business interests as well, don't you?
We're trying to do this F-45 rollout in Lebanon. Everyone thought I was mad. Look, it looks promising. There's a real issue in Lebanon at the moment. There's a real lull in the market sentiment. I ran into somebody really interesting, and she described that there is an epidemic, and she called it adrenaline fatigue, right? And she's saying that there's a real depressed state of the people right now over there, and she's basically saying that with adrenal fatigue, there's been an increase in cancer and all these different diseases and all these sicknesses. And it comes from the fact that, people are so depressed that the lack of adrenaline that's being pumped through the body, which ordinarily comes from good times and being happy and all those wonderful things that we all seem to be striving for, they're lacking. And, it's a real tough place right now. So the silver lining around that cloud for us again is we've gone into a market that's counter-cyclical again. It's at its low. We've gone in there, and believe it or not, they come to train at F-45. Lo and behold, adrenaline levels are up. Their spirits have been turned around. It's
Really?
almost cult-like.
Really?
True story.
Wow.
I just experienced it to the point where we opened the first one, everyone thought we were mad. We've had 900 members through the door in 12 months in a country that they said they couldn't afford it, right? And then now we've opened the second one, and the crew from one branch have been so supportive in the opening of the second branch that I was like, I had a moment. I didn't have much to do. I owe it to my team. The team over there has been absolutely wonderful. But didn't start to go there and try to make money. It started because I had a friend who was an elite athlete, used to play volleyball on an international level, smashed his knees, in my opinion, was depressed. And my intent was to do good, cut him into the business, gave him a job, gave him a salary, built a bit of hope into the guy. And, he's been, slowly growing and improving, and that for me is more satisfying than the money, because we're not making money right now. But look, it'll come good. I can see a light at the end of the tunnel. But the opening for the second branch was nothing short of phenomenal. I wouldn't have changed a thing about the opening. The way the staff and the team held themselves has been fantastic for me. I'm truly blessed that I'm rubbing shoulders with these lovely souls, and for me, that's what this is all about.
And look, I think that philosophy seems to be, obviously when you do your feasibilities on opportunities that come to you, you're looking at it to make sure that there's some pragmatism to it, it's sensible, but there also seems to be something else there. And as you say, it's like there seems to be this genuine desire to do good.
Oh, look, definitely a human approach is required. I mean, we don't come for money. We come from pretty humble beginnings, and one of the things I think that I want to keep alive is the humility and the realness about everything we do, and take a more human approach to everything we do, because as I learned at Harvard recently, if you do good, you do well. So we're doing good and doing well rather than do well and then go out there and do good. So, this doing good stuff it feels good, it is good, and, we'll just continue to keep doing that. And I think it's awesome.
Was that pretty enlightening when you got to Harvard and you were there with some of the greatest brains from, very similar from around the country? You made some great friends. But was it enlightening to actually go, oh my God, we're actually already doing this?
Yeah, so I'm sitting in it, so I owe it to my mate Anthony that used to work with us, and he's now moved on to other things. He's the one that brought it to my attention. I'm sitting in there, 36 students from 19 countries. Some of and it's an executive MBA, so there's some of the most brilliant minds in the country. I'm honoured and flattered that I actually made the cut. I think that in itself is pretty cool for me. I don't have a degree. I'm fairly uneducated because we couldn't afford to do that back then. Didn't even finish my diploma. Done it all against the odds, and for me to be able to sit in a lecture room at Harvard, sitting in what I think is one of the most prestigious educational establishments on the planet, sitting around there, and I never forget sitting in and amongst them, everybody had to say something about themselves, and the first thing that came out of my mouth is, hi, run a company, we do property, I'm uneducated, don't have a degree, and I'm actually honoured to be amongst you guys. I'll never forget that moment for me, because it was while my ego would want to sort of step in, it was a very humbling experience for me, and they're moments I live for, right? I love those moments. Those moments are what, keeps me going.
It seems to me that you actually run towards those moments a lot.
Yeah, I definitely attract them to my life. It makes me feel good. on the plane back, I watched this movie called Pursuit for Happiness, I think it is, Will Smith. That's the only movie I watched in the 13 and a half hours I was on the flight. It's only 52 or 56 minutes, and I'm not going to lie, I shed a tear, and it was awesome that, I think watching that film for me encompassed, a lot of what I'd been through in really, really difficult times, and defying the odds, and, barriers and tall poppy syndrome, and dealing with, all of the red tape that has been put in front of us, and, defied all the odds to, find success, and not just monetary success, but to be able to be fulfilled in what you do on a daily basis, to be able to balance work, life, money, material, all that kind of stuff. I can be a bit extreme, obviously, but, if it means, my attitude as always was, okay, if I want to be able to do all that, then I've got to make enough to be able to do all that, right? And what it was going to take to make enough to be able to do all that was put a lot more time, energy, and effort than the average person, right? So it doesn't just come to you. I mean, some people think I'm lucky. I just work hard. The definition of good luck is preparedness meeting opportunity. I prepared myself. When the opportunity came, I took it, right? That doesn't mean I'm luckier than anyone else. I'm just.
Well, you're focused. You know where you want to go.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I guess that comes back to a bit about what you've been talking about lately too, about the infinite possibilities, of thinking differently.
Yeah. And
that, you only have to know what your destination is, and the path will reveal itself, basically.
Yeah. Stay open to that. Like, absolutely. Just don't be rigid. Stay agile. I think agility has been the key to my success on all levels, whether it's humanitarian, whether it's monetary, whether it's, the various businesses we're involved in. I mean, a good example is the childcare that we've got in Brookvale. Originally found a tenant, spent millions of dollars trying to build this structure, and then the tenant that we sort of got walked on us. And so I'm left holding the bag, and, what do I do? Other people probably would have rolled over and sold the property and done whatever we did. You know what? I was open to whatever was going to happen. I reached out, and fortunately my older sister's a primary school teacher, sort of put it out there and said, hey, if you can write a syllabus that is groundbreaking, is going to be second to none, that anything this country's ever seen, then, I'll back it. Lo and behold, she blew me out of the water. I believed in her, and, you're talking about a person in my sister that used to suffer from anxiety, but wasn't really that busy, was working 4 or 5 hours a day at the primary school teaching. The minute I put her into her element and I extracted the best version of her I could, we end up with probably one of the greatest syllabuses that this country will ever see. I go to a corporate advisor to have a discussion about it. They're blown away. They want to back it to the hill. They want to roll it out. Like, through our uncertainty, we found certainty.
Yeah. We've kind of talked around a little bit. You've talked about the path and how it's been a bit difficult, and with, to people who are listening to this for the first time, this is their introduction to you. They probably don't really understand what you're saying right now in terms of, obviously you've had some challenges, but let's actually dig into a bit of that, because I had a chat with one of your sisters actually. We're doing this project with you at the moment where we're looking at drawing out some of these wonderful sort of inspirational quotes or sayings that you and your team have. And it's a team thing, like it's not just all about you. So in the course of having a conversation to sort of elicit that kind of gem from her that I'm looking for, she told me actually more about what you meant to her, and not just about her pride, but that why she looks up to you, and that she was very fortunate in her early career to have someone who recognised in her that she was capable of more than just answering phones, right? And he set her on a path and encouraged her to get an education, and then she went and did amazing stuff in that job and was elevated from position to position, and then you finally called her and said, hey sis, I need a hand, and she leapt at that. What she said to me is that in your life, through your difficulties, you could have gone a different way, but you chose not to. Talk to me about that.
Psychology is one of my little favourite pastimes, and one thing that psychology has taught me in the research that I've done is that people generally take one of two paths. You either take in simple terms a really good path, or you take a really bad path. The really good path is what we're experiencing day to day, and channeling that negative energy into trying to get the best out of every scenario or situation that you're faced with, and it's not always great stuff, but you just make do with what you can until things change, because things do over time, right? But then you can take this really negative path and you can become a drug addict, or you can go into depression, or you can do all of that kind of stuff. And I think I owe a lot of that inspiration to my mum. She was, not taking anything away from my dad. And my dad just probably a little bit more ignorant to the way life was, and he was an inspirational guy in his own way. We can go into some pretty amazing experiences I had at his wake after he passed away. Every second person would come in and tell me, your dad did this for me, and your dad, one particular relative of ours said, your father went door knocking and collected $30,000 about 40 years ago so that we didn't have to sell our house. Right? Fully, gave himself to a pretty cool cause, right? And my dad never owned his own home. That's a reality that we had to live with, that we moved from home to home. Whenever we thought we were doing okay, things didn't work out and we just moved on. And that was because, he was just so selfless in what he did. But unfortunately, it got the better of him in the end. People took advantage. He turned to alcohol and gambling and all sorts of things that, is that other path, right, that you could have taken. And not to say that I haven't failed along the way in some way, shape or form along there, but it's kind of like that graph, right? On average, we did all right. We ended up in a pretty cool place, right? We had some lows, we had some highs, and we had some, we have all that. But
tell me about your mum, though. You started talking about
Mum used to just say something like, no matter how you throw it. She was very cliche at times, and she'd throw a comment like, no matter how you throw a man, he always lands on his feet. And she had these little one-liners that, for me, I think led me into liking these one-liners that we're probably going to embark on right now. And I only just discovered that as we speak, right? So, crazy thing. But yeah, she used to work, a couple of jobs. My dad, did well, but spent well. And she worked all her life. She didn't really have an easy life. She lives in housing, won't move out. I can afford to buy her a home, and she doesn't want it. She's just like, I'm self-sustaining here. I'm okay. I've had my security blanket. I'm happy with that. She can choose to go down the ego road and say, yeah, go buy me a house, and I'd love to live in a really spanky house. But she lives in housing.
So that would keep your feet pretty grounded as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So in terms of your early years then, how many kids in the family? In your family?
My siblings? I've got three younger sisters.
Yeah, so you're the big brother, right?
Totally, and dad, and father. And father, wow.
Yeah, so, they do look up to you, don't they?
Absolutely.
And you obviously take that role pretty seriously.
Yeah.
How does that play out in your business?
they all work for me at the moment, so playing out, pretty well. In the beginning, you spoke about my sister earlier. She's now my CFO. Can you ask that question?
Yeah, what I was saying about her was that she was fortunate that she had someone that identified in her early on that she had a talent, and she went and worked on that. And then I guess she's the little sister to your big brother now working with you.
Yeah, so they're all working for me now, and that's right. She when she first came across, you got to remember she came from the corporate world. She was working for the largest car distributor in Australasia, a South African-based company, public company in Australia now. They were working her to CFO. She was pretty much deputy CFO. If her boss would leave a company, he'd take her with him, and they couldn't live without her, right? And she was pretty inspirational in the manner in which she executes her craft. Let's call it, in my opinion, is second to none. But she came across thinking it just happened to be a year or two before that, she came across and on her day offs would come over into the office and want to use the office to work. And she said, "You can hear a bloody pin drop in here. What's going on?" And she used to think that I used to rule by stealth, right? That I wouldn't allow them to talk or something. I was running some sort of concentration camp, but it actually wasn't. She didn't understand the culture of design and architecture, that it needed that bit of silence and space and time and concentration required. And the problem was that not everybody used to listen to the same kind of music, so everyone had headphones on, right? And she was used to, someone broadcasting, Today FM or whatever it was on the radio, and everybody could hear that, and it wasn't about silence. So she couldn't actually handle the whole silence thing. So her perception was that I was ruling by stealth. It was far from the truth, because I didn't barely spend any time in that bloody office. They were doing whatever the hell they wanted. So, look, within reason, I used to follow the tasks, and I wasn't a micromanager by any stretch of the imagination. I try to empower them. I try to throw them in the deep end and let them sort of sink or swim type approach. For me, I was able to breed a pretty cool thing. And so when she finally came across, she didn't know what to expect. And, to her surprise, it's a hell of a lot easier to work with me than she thought. And, that's working out okay now. So, I think she's pretty happy with it.
Well, you guys are cut from the same cloth, so that also helps, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's good. So you've done a lot of writing while you've been away.
Yep.
Yeah. What sort of inspired you to do that?
People. As I sort of said to a few people that I'd met while I was in Beirut, I live for moments. I love to have some really cool, inspirational conversations with people, dig a little deep, see what can come out, work out what makes them tick. It's not only probing, it's actually self-reflection, the way I say it. That, we share notes, we compare stories, you get validation on certain ideas that you may have or may not have. And that's life. Everyone's in search for, some people call it the truth, some people call it for, answers, whatever. As I said to one particular person, I don't care what religion, race or creed you are, as long as you're doing something about it. And that for me, is the ultimate way of life, and everything else is just a bit of extra colour.
Do you think 2019 is the year that we make Joe the citizen of the world?
Can you explain what you mean by that?
You'd said before, you kind of, you're interested in more than just what's happening here in Australia. And in some ways, maybe Australia's constraining in some ways in its thinking.
Like, I don't know who's listening, and if the Prime Minister's listening, I hope he is and he listens well. We live in a socialist country. The harder you work, the tougher your environment, the worse you're treated. I feel like a criminal in a system that I work so hard to employ, to improve the life of others, and I give so much to this country, and I'm penalised for it. Right? It's not encouraging. If I ran my company the way this government treats our citizens, it'd fold. It's really unreasonable. It's becoming unfair. There's so much red tape. There's so much rules, regulations. You've turned the state into a nanny state. Everything's just tangled up in red tape. Planning laws are convoluted. The tax laws are convoluted. Everything is just complex. And, there's something awesome about simplicity. And if they're not careful, they're going to drive out the greatest talents they have in this country. Am I a citizen of the world? I'm a citizen of the universe. This world ain't big enough for us.
I was testing you there.
Yeah,
you took me where I expected to go.
I could tell. I don't want to be a part of this world. I'm a part of the universe, and I'm one with the universe. I try to be one with the universe, and as I've said to you many a time, I just got to concentrate on me being okay, because if I'm okay, everything around me is okay.
This has been a really great chat. We've got a lot more to talk about, but this is part 1 in the conversation. So we're going to leave it there for the moment.
Thanks for listening to Developmental, Property and the Mind podcast. Stay tuned for our next episode, available wherever you get your podcasts. Or to talk to Joe, visit trafalgar.com.au. That's TRIFALGA.com.au.